attack we saw against American troops yesterday. Here's part of your conversation with Joe.
I certainly want to get every last American out of there. But it seems to me if we stayed past the end of the month, we would just be inviting an attack by ISIS, inviting an attack by, let's say, an even more radical element of the Taliban. This is the sort of thing I would not want our troops sitting there indefinitely in this sort of situation.
I am very worried we are one C-17 crash, one big bomb, one firefight at the KIA corral away from this thing turning sideways. So bottom line, let's get this thing done. Let's get out of here. If we still have people on the ground, we ought to try and extend that deadline. But I think it's like COVID, diminishing returns kind of kicking in here. Let's get what we can.
That was on Wednesday morning. Admiral, your worst fears came true in horrific fashion yesterday. How did it happen, and how concerned are you about today and tomorrow and attacks we've been told from CENTCOM that could be imminent?
Yeah, as I talked about, Willie, it's kind of the big three, one of which has occurred, a big bomb. And potentially you have to reserve the thought of a truck bomb, which is what, of course, struck the Marines in Beirut in 1983, killing 300 of them. Second is a C-17 going down, perhaps to a shoulder-fired weapon. There's no intel indication that the ISIS-K have such weapons. You just never know. Those borders are porous. There are other groups around the world who would love to see that happen. Boy, is that a dark thought. And then a firefight breaking out if the ISIS-K try a main move. All of those remain just nightmare scenarios. Let's start by just saying there are 13 families today who are having the worst day of their life, American families, and we ought to remember them. And then let's think about what comes next. Assuming we can get through what we've just talked about and get out of here, I think the president is absolutely right to say we will not forgive, we will not forget. He's kind of echoing the Borgia family from the Renaissance there. Let's also remember another famous saying from that era, which is revenge is a dish best eaten cold. And what I mean by that is let's stay focused on this mission. Let's get as many people out as we can. Let's create mechanisms for after we depart, continuing through diplomatic means, clandestine means, an underground railroad, whatever we need. And then let's go find ISIS-K. And they're probably centered in Tora Bora, where bin Laden was. And sooner or later, we will find them and they can join bin Laden at the bottom of the Indian Ocean.
Admiral, many people have said in the last 12 to 24 hours, this is precisely why the United States needs to get out in the next 4 days, because of the security risk to our troops, because of the security risk to Afghan civilians trying to get out of there. Do you believe the events of yesterday, the tragic, terrible events, and you're right, we are thinking about those 13 families in America today getting the worst phone call of their life. Do you believe this should change the American calculus at all? Should we stay longer to ensure every American gets out and every Afghan wartime ally gets out? Or does this make the case, in your eyes, to leave on August 31st?
I think there is a tactical case that is strengthened in terms of getting out, because the situation has become essentially untenable. You've got 6,000 troops, massed people trying to get out. It's just a bullseye on a huge target. So tactically, we've got to disengage from this situation. I think strategically, it jury's out in the sense that this does show us the potential for Afghanistan becoming an ungoverned space. It makes you question the Taliban's ability to contain the Islamic State K and other groups, including al-Qaeda. So I think the bottom line, Willie, is tactically finish this mission, get out, operationally and strategically, we need to be thinking about what are our over-the-horizon capabilities, long-range insertion of power, CIA clandestine operations, coming in from a variety of ways in cyber. We need to be thinking through those options because I think there is trouble ahead in Afghanistan, unfortunately.
Elise, you've worked in Afghanistan. You know the country well. You know people inside the country now. After yesterday's horrific attack, what does it mean for the Afghan people on September 1st once the American troops leave? And what does it mean for America's, what looks like now, what we'll have to go back in from time to time, as the Admiral says, to chase groups like ISIS-K?
Willie, it's an even more grim outlook for our Afghan allies who were hoping to get out, who had gone through the visa process, the labor-intensive, bureaucratic, sometimes years-long process that an unresponsive State Department was unwilling under the Trump administration because they basically just stopped processing visas of our allies. And then, it just didn't ramp up enough just to handle the capacity, the sheer volume in, the 6 months that Joe Biden has been president. And I guess now my question for the Admiral is, how do we prosecute ISIS-K if we have no presence in Afghanistan? We aren't even going to have an embassy and a Marine presence at the embassy per the usual. How are we going to do this in eastern Afghanistan without any kind of on-the-ground presence at all or any base?
We're going to begin by looking at assets regionally, Elise. So working from the inside out, unfortunately, we have no bases on the borders of Afghanistan itself, your point. However, we have friendly Arab nations in the Gulf under 1,000 miles away. That's a long-distance operation, but we can fly not only drones, but in moments of real targeting, we can bring in manned strikes from that distance. As well, we have our British allies and friends who have the atoll of Diego Garcia to the south, about 1,200 miles away. So there are bases, long distance. It's not mission impossible. It's mission really hard. We're going to use our overhead sensors to generate the intelligence. Cyber will play a part here. Both the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and the Islamic State are active on social media. They're active on cyber. We have capabilities to collect intelligence, as you know very well, through a variety of means. And then third and finally, despite the fact that there won't be a big visible U.S. presence there, I'm quite confident the CIA will be able to maintain networks. They will gather intelligence. They have assets on the ground, I'm absolutely certain, who will continue on. Look, we gather intelligence in North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, and other places. We don't have embassies. We can do it here as well. It just won't be as crisp as the kind of operation that killed bin Laden, which was launched from Afghanistan. We've lost those bases.
Mike, this, as I said, is the nightmare President Biden